Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Musu Gaming here, and today we'll be learning everything there is to know about counterattack. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is for one, a lot of governors, in fact myself included, really doesn't have any idea what counterattack does, what consists of a counterattack, what kind of amount the counterattack damage that you actually do to other troops that you're actually targeting. And I actually didn't know about a lot of things that I actually learned today until I actually thought about making this video and went ahead and took a closer look at the battle logs that I actually made today. And I am a governor who actually played for the past 997 days, so I thought it would be helpful for a lot of governors out there to give you a little bit more background on what counterattack does. So without further ado, let's just get right to it. So counterattack is basically the damage that you do to an enemy when you're actually getting attacked from the enemy. So this is a damage that you do on top of your own basic attack, but also as the enemy actually attacks you, you deal additional damage, additional white damage here to the enemy that you're getting attacked from. So this is separate from your own basic attack, but then again, it's the attack damage that you actually do to people who are attacking you. So having counterattack innately will help you do more damage on the field if you're getting attacked by multiple targets. And I took a look at many different reports that I actually made, and the first things that I actually found out about counterattack is that when you afflict counterattack, it is actually the exact same damage amount that you do with your basic attack. You can see that Huo Chubing on my turn 2 of whatever this was, uh, Huo Chubing actually did 767 damage with his own basic attack. But then again, when he was attacked by Barbarian Patrol, he actually dealt exact same amount of 767 damage back to the Barbarian Patrol. So what does that mean? So that means that you're basically afflicting your basic attack back to back to whatever is actually targeting you, no matter how many units are actually hitting you. So let's say 5 units are hitting you, 5 barbarians are hitting you at the same time. I will be actually doing basic attack to whatever I'm targeting, and on top of that, I'll do 5 different counterattack damage that has the exact same amount of damage to the 5 that's around me. So if 5 of them were actually attacking me, I would deal 767 damage to the target, and then I'll deal 5 times 767, which is, I don't know what the exact amount, which is probably like 3,900 something damage to, in total, to with each 767 damage to whatever is targeting you. So this is a very crucial part of damage to Rising Kingdoms. This is a way for you to punish all the marches that are attacking you on whether you're on the field, whether you're on the garrison, whether you're on the rally. So much more powerful than I thought. I always thought that it would do less damage than your actual basic attack, but no, it does the exact amount as your basic attack. But then again, one other thing that I did notice is that when the target doesn't hit you, in this case in turn 1, when you attack the Barbarian Patrol, and when the Barbarian Patrol is not attacking you because it's busy actually changing its direction to actually attack you back, you don't actually inflict the counterattack damage to that character. So it is only to basically anything that's hitting you at the moment. There are a couple ways for you to amplify the counterattack damage. One way is actually for you to have a normal damage buff. So let's just go to something that has a normal damage buff. So Liu Che, I think Liu Che has a normal. So Liu Che, if this commander's on the map, it deals 10% more normal damage. So if it's actually amplifying normal damage, it will amplify your counterattack damage. If you actually go to this one, it says includes basic attack, counterattack, smite, whatever. But it does not get bonuses from smite damage. So for those of you For those of you who are wondering if smite damage does amplification does make you do more counterattack damage, no, it does not. And there's a couple of commanders that actually do additional counterattack damage, like Richard the First and Charles Martel. Charles Martel allows you to deal 30% additional counterattack damage. So this skill becomes handy in a KVK like Heroic Anthem, where you can actually utilize those skills. In fact, I am in a KVK where you can actually use Charles Martel's counterattack skill as your additional skill that you can use in Heroic Anthem. Now, with that said, I basically went through every single commander combo that I could actually bring out with my current account. So I actually tested 6 or 7 different marches. So I tested Huo and Arthur, which is one of the most popular cavalry march that you can actually think of at this very moment. And I actually did Attila Nevsky because a lot of people actually use Attila Nevsky as a rally at this very moment without Subutai in the game as of today, to basically punish the swarmers of your own rally if you're trying to rally with cavalry. So that I actually tested with Attila Nevsky. But then again, I actually pulled out all the equipments, all the armaments from my marches just so that you get a better, more clear understanding of how those were amplified. And then I tested Liu Philip, which is one of the most recent hotness among infantry march users. I actually had Liu Alexander the Great, because that's another popular march. Guan Yu Scipio, as I don't really have Ragnar Prime because I'm a cab main. I don't really have those recent skill damage. I don't have a couple of the most recent infantry commanders right now. And then I actually tested with Zhuge Liang Herman. So one of the most popular and probably the best archer march that is out there, just to get a bit of comparison in terms of what is the total amount of damage that these commanders do within the given cycle that I actually did. What is the percentage of the damage that skill damage dealt? What is the percentage of damage normal attack, basic attack actually dealt? And then what is the percentage of damage that counterattack dealt? So let's just go ahead and move on to the Excel sheet where I actually put all those information in, and then we can go ahead and take a closer look at how much counterattack damage each march did, and also kind of relative marginal damage addition that you'll get for 10% counterattack damage that you actually add to the march. All right, now we are here at my Excel sheet. As you can see, that actually made everything. It's kind of hard to see. Let me just go ahead and enlarge them a little bit so it's a little easier for you to see. Let's go ahead and reduce those. Those are a little bit more interesting and necessary. So the way that I actually have this laid out, I have basically the primary, secondary of the march that I use. I have the buffs, so just for reference, and then I have the other buffs. So the other buffs are the ones that doesn't really impact the counterattack damage. So for example, skill damage doesn't impact the counterattack damage, but it does impact probably the skill damage proportion. So those skills are actually put in those other buffs category. And then damage by category, this actually has the counterattack related buffs that this march actually has, and also at the same time it has the total damage that this march did within the given turn count, and then it has active skill damage, it has basic damage, a basic attack damage, and then counterattack damage, and then I actually made it into a proportion that of this damage that these actually dealt compared to total damage. So for instance, for Huo Arthur within the 14 turn damage cycle, that was actually just one cycle of Huo does active skill, Arthur does active skill. It dealt 63% of its damage as skill damage, 19% of the damage as basic attack, 17% of the damage as counterattack. And then those other columns that I have here are basically estimated counterattack damage percent of the total damage if you are getting swarmed by 3 marches, 5 marches, 7 marches, and 10 marches. So the reason why this is important is because this will be helpful for you to get a better understanding of, let's say you're getting swarmed by swarm as a rally, if you're getting swarmed in the field, what is the percent, how does the counterattack scale for your very march that you're actually considering using. And then this column right here, it basically gives you damage gain from 10% additional counterattack that you add. So for example, let's say you have 10% additional counterattack damage from Martel, which let's say you don't have the 4 skill of Martel maxed out. What is the amount of damage that you'll get in addition to whatever the counterattack damage that you're dealing if you're getting swarmed by 1 march, if you're getting swarmed by 5 march? So that's how this is laid out. Now, let's just go ahead and jump right to each things that I actually took screenshots of. So Whoa Arthur has a lot of attack, a lot of defense, a lot of health, and tremendous amount of skill damage. This is the most amount of skill damage that I've actually seen, even more so than Zhuge Herman, although Zhuge Herman actually has like poison debuff that can actually further amplify that. I only did 1 skill turn because it's 14. I don't think it has any additional like 10% chance to do whatever for each of the for Whoa Arthur. So I just did 14 turn report. It didn't have any relative buff to counterattack, and basically out of 43,000 damage, it did 27,000 damage as active skill. That is 63.71% of skill damage, and basic attack does a little bit more than counterattack almost in all cases if you're going 1v1, because it doesn't count the first 1 or 2 auto attack that you actually inflict to it before that target hits you back. So in this case, Whoa actually dealt 17% of its damage as counterattack damage. But let's say this march was actually swarmed by 3 marches, 5 marches, 7 marches, 10 marches. So in that case, your damage that you do to counterattack damage scales by the number of targets that's hitting you. So with that said, that actually will increase the amount of damage that you'll do by a significant amount. If you're using Whoa Arthur, it will, if you're getting swarmed by, let's say, 5 marches, 51% of the damage you will do will be counterattack damage. And basically, if you actually have 10% additional counterattack damage from whatever source that you actually have, if you're getting hit by 1 march, it will deal 1.4% additional all damage. But then again, if you're getting hit by 5 marches, it will deal 2.38% additional damage. I think that's why is this kind of weird? Oh, because it was already doing a lot more damage. Okay, cool. All right, well, let's take a look at Attila Nevsky. So Attila Nevsky has 60% attack, 20% defense, 20% health. It only does 30% additional skill damage because Attila has 30% negative skill damage. And then Nevsky actually gives you 60% more skill damage, so kind of cancels out here and there. Does 30% more damage. I took a look at 70 turn for Attila Nevsky, just because of the fact that Attila Nevsky will actually have a lot of chance additional damage amplification. For example, Attila has this 4 skill 25% chance for 50% or 100% all damage bonus for 2 seconds, which is a huge buff. It will only be averaged out if you had more turns in for this. 20% more normal damage when it has less than 50%, and then 15% damage defense reduction for Attila for Nevsky's active skill, and it also has 5% normal damage buff from Nevsky's expertise, I believe. With that said, out of 187,000 damage that it dealt pretty even number of active skill, basic skill, counterattack skill damage. It's basically all 33%, 33%, 33%, with slight adjustments here and there. So a lot less skill damage heavy, but a lot more basic and counterattack damage heavy if you're 1v1ing. And then that damage will amplify really a lot. The counterattack damage's proportion of the damage you deal will amplify really a lot. Let's say if you're getting hit by 5 marches, you're dealing 71% of the damage that you will deal will be counterattack damage. So, and then 10 marches, it will go all the way up to 83%. And if you actually have 10% additional counterattack damage, you'll gain 2.14% of total damage that you get from everything else. And this one, I'm not sure if I did the math wrong, but 1.91%, it does sound a little strange that if you're getting swarmed by more troops, 10% additional counterattack damage will deal less damage. So I'm not sure about this one, but I'm too lazy to do the math. But it basically gives you at least 2% all damage if you give your Attila another 10% counterattack. Is basically the way that I would actually interpret this. Now let's move on to Liu Che and Philip. Liu Che Philip has 20% attack, 55% defense, and it has a lot of skill damage factor from smite damage factor from Liu Che, but we're not going to actually count that as basic attack or counterattack. We're going to count them separately and then just put it in the active skill bucket. Now, Liu Che Philip actually has a lot of buffs. It has 10% normal damage buff, and it has 2 seconds damage reduction, 2 seconds damage reduction of 20%, and 40% all damage amplification from Philip's active skill. So that would actually help you do more basic and counterattack damage on top of your active skill, in my opinion. And it also has 30% all damage if you're actually using one troop type for Philip, and also has 10% chance for 800 skill damage factor to 3 nearby enemies with cooldown of 3 seconds from Philip. So just actually giving you a little bit of a heads up from Philip. Philip actually, so this damage will not be utilized fully to its full potential. So the skill damage reduction will be active skill damage will be kind of lower than what we would normally see, because this would hit 3 targets, but right now you're doing 1v1 against a barb. So with that said, so Philip Liu Che does 48% from his skills based on his passive and active skills. The basic attack and counterattack does about 26 to 25%. And as you kind of get swarmed more, so it does get pretty close to whatever Attila Nevsky was doing in terms of counterattack damage proportion. If it gets to like 7 marches, it will just be around 70% versus 77%. So counterattack damage will take up a very great proportion of the damage that you do as you get more marches attack you, just naturally, just because of the fact that you are doing additional basic attack to everything that's attacking you. Yeah, it basically gains another 1.8%, somewhere between Attila and Huo. Nothing too surprising, I'll believe. Let's just go ahead and move on. Alex Liu Che. So Alex Liu Che, I'm not going to go over too much about Alex Liu Che. Alex Liu Che, actually one thing that I'm missing here is actually Alex has this conditional buff that will give you additional attack or defense based on whether or not you actually have shield or not. This was just hard for me to actually put it in an Excel sheet, so I just took that out. But it does still have that 10% normal damage. It does have 1200 damage shield, damage factor shield, and 30% more damage for 4 seconds after Alex using active skill. So very similar to Philip. And it has 10% chance for 1700 damage factor with 3-second cooldown. Again, very similar to Philip. Now, this march right here actually relies a little bit more on the active skill. Maybe it is just the difference between what Philip can do with 3 marches that is around, 3 enemies that is around, versus who Alex being able to do that full 1700 damage factor. But then again, it does a little bit less damage, a little bit more damage with its active skills. But everything else is basically the same. And in terms of counterattack additional factor, also is about the same. Now let's move on to Guan's Skippy. I know that a lot of people may not be using Guan a lot, but I still use it. I'm sure a lot of other people who didn't have a chance to actually expertise. What was the name? The Prime Commander, the most recent Prime Commander, Ragnar Prime. Yeah, Ragnar Prime will still be using Guan because of his silence, because of many different factors that Guan actually provide for on the field. Guan actually has Guan Skippy actually has pretty good attack, 70% attack and 20% health, which is very valuable. The health for infantry is very, very valuable in Rise of Kingdoms. And Guan actually has 10% more skill damage, 10% chance to do more skill damage of 1000 whenever Guan. Oh, no. I think that's wrong. I think that is actually 50%. Let's actually take a look at the game actually. What does Guan have? I think that's, yeah, I was just writing it off of whatever I was reading, but I guess I wrote that wrong. I think that's either 25 or 50% from Guan. Yeah, it has 50% to do extra direct damage of 1000 to the target. If it has 2 or more targets, that's not something that we're taking a look at right now, but it does have more damage. So Guan has 1050% chance to do 50% chance for 1000 damage factor when he uses active skill, and they also gain 30% rage faster if silenced. So this will actually bump up that skill damage reliance of this march, and also has 10% chance to deal 500 damage factor for 3 seconds for every second for 3 seconds. So 1500 damage factor for 10% chance, which is basically what Alex does at the same time, but also has cooldown of 3 seconds, so very similar. And when I looked at this particular march, they did about 53% of the damage, little less reliance on the normal attack damage. I think it very much might be the fact that it's missing that 10% normal attack damage buff from Liu Che. I think it's probably exactly the same without that, but then again, hence it will benefit a little bit less from the counterattack damage bonus that it gets when compared to Alex Liu Che and Liu Che Philip, as it relies a little bit more on the skill damage buff. With that said, let's just go ahead and move on to Zhuge Liang Herman. Zhuge Liang Herman is the skill damage monster. They are probably comparable to Ho Arthur in terms of the proportion of damage that it does as skill damage. It does 60% of the damage as skill damage, and it has pretty even 20% for basic and counterattack damage. And if it actually gets hit by 5 different marches, it only deals 55% of its damage as counterattack damage, as it's still going to do a great proportion of its damage with skill damage, and it will benefit actually pretty greatly if it's getting swarmed, if it does gain that 10% counterattack damage. But then again, if you're just hitting one march, if you're hitting fewer than 5 marches, if you're actually getting swarmed by 5 different marches, you're basically dead anyways. So it does make sense that you're just doing most of your damage as counterattack damage. But yeah, 10% counterattack will just give you marginally 1.5% additional all damage if you're hitting one march. Not really worth it in my opinion, because you're not going to be able to do that much damage anyways, because you're going to be hunted down pretty quickly. But that's it for this video. I hope this helped you get a better understanding of what like the very definition of counterattack and how they actually are applied. Again, I didn't know that it will do the same amount of damage as basic attack except for the first turn, which I thought was a very interesting fact that I found out. And one of the reasons why a lot of people actually, use those counterattack based heavy rallies like at Tilanevsky, because if you're worried about getting swarmed down, it can do a lot of damage, very, very significant portion of his damage as counterattack damage. And then if you give those marches a little bit more counterattack damage, it will probably hurt a lot for those who are swarming you. Especially with the rallies, because rallies you have a lot more troops from the fact that you're actually leading the rally. That would further amplify the percent of damage, a lot of the heavy lifting that the counterattack does to your swarmers. But then again, I hope this was helpful. If you did like this video, please go ahead and drop a like and subscribe for the channel. And I'll be back with another video.